So now let's talk about displaying elements inside of our window itself. Let's go ahead and open up the test window in MonoDevelop. Now that we have our onGUI class, we can go ahead and start adding some additional logic. Before we modify the onGUI method, let's go into the onLostFocus method and reset the current selection to equal null once we've lost focus in the window. Now, let's go inside of the condition where we test to see that the current selection is not equal to null and delete our test code. Inside of here, we're going to create a new vertical layout. We'll use the Editor GUI Layout class and call begin vertical. Next, we'll also want to make sure that we end this so that we don't forget. Simply call the endVertical method on the Editor GUI Layout class. Now inside of here, let's create a new field. We'll call Editor GUI Layout.label field, and inside of it, let's pass in a string currently selected game object. Next, we'll create a label field to display the current selection's name. Here we'll type out Editor GUI Layout.label field, and we'll pass in the current selection.name value. Finally, let's create a vector3 field for the current selection's position. We'll call the Editor GUI Layout.vector3, pass in the string @position for the label, and then we'll pass in the current selection.transform.position. Now let's save this and go back into Unity. We'll select our new sprite and open up our test window. Here you can see our currently selected game object is going to be the new sprite, and we're also getting its position. Let's dock this window and click on the empty space in the hierarchy panel. You'll see that our test window is still rendering. If we go back in and give it focus, you'll see that it now clears itself. If we select the game object again and click in the window, when it gets focus, it'll start rendering the GUI. Let's go and add some instructions so that people know how to use this window correctly. Let's switch back over to our code, and at the end of the condition, if we don't have a current selection, let's go ahead and create a label that tells people what to do. We'll use Editor GUI Layout label field, and we'll pass in the string select a game object first, then click here. Let's save this, go back into Unity, deselect the sprite, and you'll now see that our test window will reset itself and give you instructions as to what to do. If you select the sprite and click on the test window when it gets focus, it'll immediately redraw. We can actually skip the on focus and simply detect whether or not we've selected a current game object that meets a certain parameter and start displaying the UI inside of the test window. That's exactly what the inspector does. The last thing we're going to do is let's save some of the values back to our selected object. If we go back into our test window class, let's go ahead and save out the vector3. We'll do current selection.transform.position equals the return value from the Editor GUI Layout vector3 field. We'll save this and now go back into Unity. Since the new sprite is already selected, we can go ahead and now change the position by dragging across the X label, just like we would in the inspector. Let's go ahead and reset this to 0. Now we're able to create custom windows that can also manipulate game objects in our scene.